Hi, boys and girls. I am here today to read our next Chris Van Allsburg book with you. Yesterday, we read The Garden of Abdul Ghassatzi, and I kind of outlined some things I wanted us to remember about that story. So if you haven't watched that video yet, pause this one, go back and watch yesterday's video, The Garden of Abdul Ghassatzi, and then rejoin us for The Wreck of the Zephyr. I would hate to give you any spoilers about such a great book. So, if you're going to keep watching, I'm going to assume you've already heard it. The Garden of Abdul Ghassatzi was about a dog named Fritz and a little boy, Alan, who was babysitting him. And I know that dog was so mischievous. And in fact, while Fritz isn't a character in all of Van Allsburg's books, that picture of the little dog will be in all of them. So remember to watch for that today. I'll help point it out to you. The second thing it had was a mysterious character. We had the retired magician, for whom the book is named, Abdul Ghassatzi, and he was hard to figure out, wasn't he? We weren't exactly sure what he was up to. It had a twist ending, kind of a bit of a surprise at the end there. And not only was it a twist ending, it's what we call an open ending, which means that you, as the reader, get to make up your mind about what you thought happened. So some of you have commented telling me whether or not you thought Fritz had really been turned into a duck. That's that open ending. Van Allsburg never tells us the answer to that question. He leaves it up to us to find out. We'll see if The Wreck of Zephyr has anything in common in that. Our goal is to compare and contrast these texts, looking for what they have that's the same and what's different. So today's text, The Wreck of the Zephyr. Now, for those of you who like a little bit of Greek mythology, Greek history, and a little bit of etymology, or where words come from, that history, I can tell you where the word Zephyr comes from today. The word Zephyr now means a light, smooth breeze. But long ago in ancient Greece, when they believed in many, many Greek gods, there was a Greek god named Zephyros. And Zephyros was the god of the west wind. So Zephyr comes from Zephyros. And this is the wreck of the Zephyr. Once, while traveling along the seashore, I stopped at a small fishing village. After eating lunch, I decided to take a walk. I followed a path out of the village uphill to some cliffs high above the sea. At the edge of these cliffs was a most unusual sight, the wreck of a small sailboat. An old man was sitting among the broken timbers, smoking a pipe. He seemed to be reading my mind when he said, "Odd, isn't it?" "Yes," I answered. "How did it get here?" "Waves carried it up during a storm." "Really?" I said. "It doesn't seem the waves could ever get that high." The old man smiled. "Well, there is another story." He invited me to have a seat and listen to his strange tale. So we are about to flash back and hear the strange tale of how this boat got lodged up on this piece of land like this. "In our village years ago," he said, "there was a boy who could sail a boat better than any man in the harbor. He could find a breeze over the flattest sea. When dark clouds kept other boats at anchor, the boy would sail out, ready to prove to the villagers, to the sea itself, how great a sailor he was." Oh, look at him. Now, sailboats are a bit different than regular boats, aren't they? You don't have a motor, and so what you do is you use the wind, and figure out where I'm pointing here. The wind catches the sails and pushes the boat across the water. One morning, under an ominous sky, he prepared to take his boat, the Zephyr, out to sea. Look at this picture. Look at the sky, how dark it is. When I hear the word ominous, I'm not exactly sure what that means. But look at this picture. The sky doesn't look good, does it? Not for sailing. Ominous comes from the word omen. We've talked about omens, good and bad omens, kind of signs of what's to come. So an ominous sky is kind of dark. It lets you know the weather's not going to be very good today. Did you notice something else in this picture? I noticed it. Who is that? Here's our little dog we've been looking for. A fisherman warned the boy to stay in port. Already a strong wind was blowing. I'm not afraid, the boy said, because I'm the greatest sailor there is. The fisherman pointed to a seagull gliding overhead. There's the only sailor who can get out on a day like this. The boy just laughed as he hoisted his sails into a blustery wind. I'm thinking about character traits of this boy, are you? He seems kind of cocky. A little bit like Odysseus, huh? Like, oh, I got this. Let's see, look at that storm. Look how dark the clouds are and the waves. The wind whistled in the rigging as the Zephyr pounded her way through the water. The sky grew black and the waves rose up like mountains. The boy struggled to keep his boat from going over. Suddenly, a gust of wind caught the sail. The boom swung around and hit the boy's head. So this piece here is a boom. It's a beam that runs across at the bottom of the sail. He fell to the cockpit floor and did not move. Maybe he should not have gone sailing. When the boy opened his eyes, he found himself lying on a beach. The Zephyr rested behind him, carried there by the storm. The boat was far from the water's edge. The tide would not carry it back to sea. The boy set out to look for help. So now we know what a Zephyr is in our story. The Zephyr is the name of the boy's boat. Here he is, just waking up on the beach. He walked for a long time and was surprised that he didn't recognize the shoreline. He climbed a hill expecting to see something familiar, but what he saw instead was a strange and unbelievable sight. Before him were two boats sailing high above the water. Astonished, he watched them glide by. What do you think astonished means? How would you feel if you saw this? Boats flying high above the water. Here he is laying in the grass looking at them. I'd be surprised by that. Let's see if that works. Surprised, he watched them glide by. Then a third sailed past, towing the Zephyr. The boats entered a bay that was bordered by a large village. There they left the Zephyr. The boy made his way down to the harbor, to the dock where his boat was tied. He met a sailor who smiled when he saw the boy. Pointing to the Zephyr, he asked, "Yours?" The boy nodded. The sailor said they almost never saw strangers on their island. It was surrounded by a treacherous reef. So a dangerous reef. Now, reefs are where the coral grows up, and it's hard like a rock, but it's really actually a living animal, believe it or not. The Zephyr must have been carried over the reef by the storm. He told the boy that later he would take him and the Zephyr back over the reef. But the boy said he would not leave until he learned to sail above the waves. The sailor told him it took years to learn to sail like that. Besides, he says, the Zephyr does not have the right sails. The boy insisted. He pleaded with the sailor. I'll let you take a look at the picture. Finally, the sailor said he would try to teach him if the boy promised to leave the next morning. The boy agreed. The sailor went to a shed and got a new set of sails. All afternoon they sailed back and forth across the bay. Sometimes the sailor took the tiller, and the boat would magically begin to lift off out of the water. But when the boy tried, he could not catch the wind that made boats fly. When the sun went down, they went back to the harbor. They dropped anchor, and a fisherman rowed them to the shore. In the morning, the sailor said, "We'll put your own sails back on the Zephyr and send you home." He took the boy to his house, and the sailor's wife fed them oyster stew. I love these pictures, don't you? They are so detailed. After dinner, the sailor played the concertina. He sang a song about a man named Samuel Blue who, long ago, tried to sail his boat over land and crashed. For the wind over land's never steady nor true, and all the men that sail there'll meet Samuel Blue. So that's part of the song he's singing, and he's saying, if you fly your boat over land, you'll crash just like Samuel Blue. When he was done with his song, the sailor sent the boy to bed, but the boy could not sleep. He knew he could fly his boat if he had another chance. He waited until the sailor and his wife were asleep. Then he quietly dressed and went to the harbor. As he rowed out to the Zephyr, the boy felt the light evening wind grow stronger and colder. You think that would make for a good night for a sail? I'm not so sure. Under a full moon, he sailed the Zephyr into the bay. He tried to remember everything the sailor had told him. He tried to feel the wind pulling his boat forward, lifting it up. Then suddenly, the boy felt the Zephyr begin to shake. The sound of the water rushing past the hull grew louder. The air filled with spray as the boat sliced through the waves. The bow slowly began to lift. Higher and higher, the Zephyr rose out of the water, then finally broke free. The sound of rushing water stopped. There was only the sound of wind in the sails. The Zephyr was flying. Very cool. Using the stars to guide him, the boy set a course for home. The wind blew very hard, churning the sea below, but that did not matter to the Zephyr as she glided through the night sky. When clouds blocked the boy's view of the stars, he trimmed the sails and climbed higher. Surely the men of the island never dared fly so high. Now the boy was certain he was truly the greatest sailor of all. Ooh. He certainly is beginning to think a lot of himself, isn't he? Maybe he's even a bit braggadocious. He steered well, but the night was over. Or before the night was over, he saw the moonlit spire of the church at the edge of his village. As he drew closer to land, an idea took hold of him. What do you think he's going to think to do? I think he'd probably try to get attention, right? He seems to be that type. That he would want other people to know how wonderful he is. He would sail over the village and ring the Zephyr's bell. Then everyone would see him and know that he was the greatest sailor. He flew over the tree-topped cliffs of the shore, but as he reached the church, the Zephyr began to fall. This is what that song predicted, right? You try to sail over land, gonna crash like Samuel Blue. And see what happens. Maybe he can save it. The wind had shifted. The boy pulled as hard as he could on the tiller, but it did no good. The wind shifted again. He steered for the open sea, but the trees at the cliff's edge stood between him and the water. At first there was just the rustle of leaves brushing the hull. Then the air was filled with the sound of breaking branches and ripping sails. The boat fell to the ground, and here she sits today. A remarkable tale, I said, as the old man stopped to relight his pipe. What happened to the boy? He broke his leg that night. Of course, no one believed his story about flying boats. It was easier for them to believe that he was lost in the storm and thrown up here by the waves, the old man laughed. No, sir, the boy never amounted to much. People thought he was crazy. He just took odd jobs around the harbor. Most of the time he was out sailing, searching for that island and a new set of sails. A light breeze blew through the trees. The old man looked up. Wind coming, he said. I've got some sailing to do. He picked up a cane, and I watched as he limped slowly toward the harbor. And that is the end of the wreck of the Zephyr. I bet you have some guesses about the identity of the old man who now has a limp, just like somebody might have if they had broken a leg in a boat crash like that. Interesting to think about. So, if we look back to yesterday's text, we don't have a character of a dog named Fritz, but we did see the dog in the book. We do have a mysterious character, right? This old man is very mysterious. Do we have a twist ending? Do we have an open ending? Absolutely. I think it's your job to decide. Is the old man the boy? Is he telling the truth? Did the boat just crash at sea? Or did it crash because he was flying the boat? That is a decision you will have to make, as you'll have to make similar decisions with many other Chris Van Allsburg stories. I hope you will get back on tomorrow and join me for our next Chris Van Allsburg book. I cannot wait to share it with you. As you know, he's one of my favorite authors. All right, I'll see you guys later. Bye.